When an ICE agent threw a woman to the ground at immigration court, she fled to Congressman Dan Goldman's office for safety. He's here to talk about that and so much more. But let's talk about this immigration case. On Friday, that immigration agent was let go. I wonder how you feel about that and about what's been going on in immigration court.
Look, I was pleased that Secretary Noem took immediate action. I had certainly called on her to do that yesterday after speaking with the mother and her two young children after she had been thrown to the ground excessively violently by an ICE agent. And there's a general fear in communities all throughout this country right now, not just immigrant communities, so many others, as to what this militarization of ICE is doing, and the masked, unidentified, plainclothes ICE agents snatching people from court who are here lawfully. They are going through the asylum process. And this was just egregious. And so I was pleased, in fairness. I've been quite critical of Secretary Noem, but I was very pleased that she took action immediately.
Was it the right step to do?
It was the right step to do, but I'm not sure it's enough. And in part, it's not enough because we have a Justice Department now that is so one-sided and partisan that it has undermined credibility in our entire democracy, our rule of law. And when you have people like LaMonica McIver, my colleague from New Jersey, who was arrested for barely touching an ICE agent, and then you see this man throw a woman to the ground, like cases should be treated alike. And if, as Pam Bondi says, no one is above the law, then she needs to take a very close look at this case to see whether or not this individual violated the law. And Friday, Brad Lander and I sent a letter to Attorney General Bondi asking her, referring this case and asking her to investigate it consistent with the precedent she has set in this administration.
But you're a former federal prosecutor. What kind of charges do you think should be brought against this agent?
Well, there is a charge, deprivation of rights, and some of it depends on how serious the injury was, how serious the act was. And so that's going to be up to the prosecutors to determine whether or not this meets that element. But it is serious enough conduct that it's not simply enough to fire him. We need to set an example for agents all around the country. Because imagine this person did that on video camera in public. Imagine what they're doing behind closed doors in these immigration detention centers, where they will not let Congress, they will not let me go and inspect them, as I am statutorily allowed to do as part of my oversight responsibility.
So you think it should send a message?
Yes, and I think that it also sends a message that no one is above the law. If that's what the Attorney General says about James Comey, about LaMonica McIver, then let's see it when it's someone in the administration.
Let me ask you this question. You have a situation where this thing happened and this woman came to your office. Did you get an opportunity to talk to her and get a sense of how she was feeling after this whole thing happened? I guess also after her husband had been taken into custody.
Right. So they had together, they are jointly filing for asylum, and they had a court appearance. He was taken out and arrested after that court appearance. Immediately after she came to my office, she was with an immigration advocate from a clergy who I've worked with on these issues before, and they came to my office. I happened to walk in shortly after, and we did get an opportunity to talk. And it just strikes me, what really blew me away was looking at her little kids, and I have little kids, and just imagining what's going through their mind. And at that point, her husband called and she put him on the phone with the little kids. And there was a boy, maybe 8 years old. And I don't speak Spanish, but I understood when he first picked up the phone and said, "Dónde está? Where are you? When are you coming back?" And just to see the shaken emotions of this woman who was injured in the back of her head and ended up going to the hospital, it's just not the way this country should operate. And we should make sure that we do not have people who are here illegally violating our laws, and that we have a lawful and and measured immigration process. But we should not be using fear and terror to go after people who are actually going through lawful pathways, but more importantly, are human beings. And we're all come from immigrants here in this country. And it really rubs me to the craw that she was so shaken and fearful. And it's not the way that this country should operate.
But you have a bill called the No Secret Police Bill that would prevent ICE agents from wearing masks. You have 100 sponsors already. What are you trying to accomplish with that? And do you think it will actually get passed in Washington?
In a similar vein, right? We don't have secret police in this country. We are a democracy. We are transparent. Our law enforcement is transparent. We have due process rights. We have a very clear and settled justice system that operates on our right to a jury and other rights. And when you see plainclothes, masked agents going around striking fear and terror into anyone who's here, that is not democratic. That is reminiscent of authoritarian regimes. It is susceptible to imitation, and there have been people who have pretended to be ICE agents and have committed crimes, but it also is designed to terrorize. And that's just anti-democratic, and that's why so many of my colleagues have signed on to this bill.
You brought up the case of James Comey, the former FBI director who was indicted. I wonder you're a former federal prosecutor. I wonder what your take is on the fact that this case was brought against the former FBI director.
It is, I think, the final nail in the coffin of the Department of Justice as we have known it, as I knew it.
Are you saying it's the weaponization of the Justice Department?
It is the open and brazen politicization and weaponization of the Justice Department. Now, you don't have to take my word for it because Donald Trump said it himself. The U.S. attorney refused to charge this case because it has no merit. Donald Trump fired him, then directed Pam Bondi to hire a lackey of Donald Trump's who has no prosecutorial experience so that she would charge Jim Comey with really trumped up bogus charges. And there's no way of avoiding that this is Donald Trump's use of our criminal justice system for revenge and retribution against his political enemies. We've seen it already on a number of occasions, but this really puts the nail in the coffin that this Justice Department is a political arm of Donald Trump. And more importantly, I don't think it recovers so quickly. This is really foundational to our rule of law and our democracy. It calls into question every single investigation that is done by the FBI and the Department of Justice, and it undermines faith in our democracy and our system, and frankly, in the broader rule of law beyond criminal justice.
But Mr. Trump would probably argue that the Justice Department was weaponized by the Democrats against him. Is that a fair argument on his part?
He certainly does argue that. He argues that without any evidence of that. And if you look at the Department of Justice under Joe Biden, they named a special counsel, totally independent, not only from the president, but from the attorney general. There's no evidence that Joe Biden ever spoke to Merrick Garland about any individual case. This is Donald Trump's victimhood trying to politically protect him from all of his own misconduct. And it is his word that they went after him, that he has managed to convince a lot of people of. There's no doubt about it. But there's no evidence to support it, as opposed to his executive orders directing the Department of Justice to investigate his enemies or his adversaries, or a DM or a tweet that directs the Attorney General to charge.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But up next, we talk to a panel of experts about politics on the other side of the Hudson. We are back with Congressman Dan Goldman. I'd like to continue our discussion about the indictment of Jim Comey. Do you think that this signals a policy by the Justice Department to go after other people who might be considered enemies of the president? For example, he's already in the same office. allegedly investigating the Attorney General in New York, Tish James.
Yeah, well, we've seen a pattern of this from day one, the January 6 pardons. We saw it then with Mayor Eric Adams' case, where the Department of Justice actually put in a memo that their decision to dismiss the case is not based on the facts and evidence, which is the only thing that their decision should be based on. It was based on politics and policy. And it's continued now with John Bolton and Tish James and Adam Schiff and Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs. There's an executive order directing the Attorney General to investigate them. So we've seen the pattern of this ramping up. We have now gone over the cliff with this indictment, and I do expect more to come. In fact, the president said that there will be more to come. And the notion that the president of the United States is directing the Attorney General what to do, what criminal cases to investigate, and in Tom Homan's case, what obvious investigations that should be pushed forward were dismissed, were declined when he took a $50,000 bribe. This is so corrosive to our democracy, but it's also corrosive to our reputation around the world.
But see, here's the question I would ask. So if Mr. Comey decides to appeal the indictment before trial and went to a court and say that this is unfair prosecution, what chance does he have in the courts of prevailing?
A very good chance. A very good chance.
Even to go to the Supreme Court?
Yes. I mean, imagine if there is a law that prohibits vindictive or selective prosecution, can you imagine a fact pattern that fits that better than this one?
But would the conservative Supreme Court, that with a number of judges that were handpicked by President Trump, decide to cross him and to say that this is improper?
You know, I wish I could predict the Supreme Court.
I'm just wondering whether judges would say that, you know, on the law, that this was wrong.
Well, what we've seen from the judiciary is that lower court judges are very consistently and routinely stopping Donald Trump's lawlessness. And then it gets to the Supreme Court, and they're allowing it to continue with sleight of hand, on the shadow docket, under the dark of night, without an explanation, opinion, without briefing. And then they're going to get to the merits later, but by that time, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So this Supreme Court has been also acting as a political animal. So I have no faith in the Supreme Court doing the right thing. But what I think you will see on the district court and the appellate court, if it gets there, is that they will roundly reject this indictment.
Well, let's talk about another case, the case involving Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill and the fact that her records from the Naval Academy were released without being redacted. I know that Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, has called for an investigation. What chance is there that that investigation will actually take place?
Look, Marcia, this is the problem that we're running into, is that the Republicans use their access to government records to assist a Republican candidate with information that they could construe however they wanted to. That is improper, obviously, but it is the further politicization and weaponization of our government. This needs to be investigated. If the executive branch, if the government doesn't, if the administration does not do it, then Congress needs to do it. Unfortunately, Congress is controlled by House Republicans who have completely abdicated their separate check and balance, their separate obligation to follow the Constitution. And so I don't have high expectations that they will do anything that contravenes or goes against Donald Trump.
So it's hard to escape the fact that there's a mayoral race going on in New York City. I wonder if you've made a decision about whether to make an endorsement.
Well, I've had some good conversation with Zohran Mamdani shortly after the primary. He and I have a lot of shared views on affordability and the desire to address our housing crisis, to address the expensive child care. We worked together on a free bus pilot in the state legislature. And so I think we share a lot of the goals. But I've been very clear with him and with New Yorkers that as mayor, he is ultimately responsible for the safety and security of all New Yorkers. And that includes Jewish New Yorkers who are at heightened fear right now for legitimate reason, because 70% of religious-based hate crimes are anti-Semitic.
Yes,
and it's gone up. And it's not simply protests or slurs on college campuses. It is actual murders in the name of anti-Semitism. And so I have asked him to consider taking serious and concrete action to demonstrate that he is going to make sure that Jews are protected and are secure in our city, and I hope he does that.
Well, when he was on this show just a few weeks ago, I asked him if he would direct the comptroller to disinvest in companies that do business with Israel or to stop buying Israeli bonds. And he said he wanted to enforce the law, and he wanted to adhere to BDS. I wonder how you feel about that position.
I think it's really disappointing and counterproductive. And I think that his call to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom I have many disagreements and really oppose what he is now doing in Gaza, is far outside the bounds of what a mayor should be doing, and further exacerbates this fear in the Jewish community as we approach the election.
But some would say that that might be a little bit of grandstanding, given the fact that if a foreign leader comes to the United States to go to the UN, they're under federal protection, and so that he wouldn't have the authority to arrest somebody like that. Is it grandstanding, or do you think he would actually try to do it?
Well, I don't know, but in some ways it makes it worse. For him to say that he would do something that he does not have the authority to do, and the message that that is intended to send is troubling. And it's consistent with some of his past statements. And I know he has said that he opposes anti-Semitism and that he is creating a department that's designed to address hate crimes. But we, or at least I feel it's important to see some concrete steps to actually address the surge in anti-Semitism that is happening in this city and around the country.
Presently, he does not support the idea that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. I wonder if you think if he said that, if that would go some distance to assuage the fears of Jews.
I don't know. I find it striking that he would say that, consistently say that he recognizes Israel as a state with equal rights, when there are many, many countries around the world that do not have equal rights. And so, you know, I'm a little troubled at this idea of singling out Israel in that way. But it is very important that Israel remain a Jewish and democratic state. And the concerns that people have right now about the direction that the Israeli government is going, as distinct from the state and the people of Israel, are very legitimate and are very troubling. And I urge the Trump administration especially to take much more restrictive action and significant action to curtail what is going on.
So last but not least, the issue near and dear to your heart. You chaired a committee that would approve the redevelopment of the marine terminal in Brooklyn. It's a huge deal. Tell me about it. Yeah,
this is the Brooklyn port in western Brooklyn on the water, 122 acres, had been allowed to deteriorate so that it was almost falling in the water and was almost unusable. And in order to save the port, the city needed a tremendous amount of money to fix this. And so that requires a multi-use redevelopment plan. And I chaired a task force of community members and elected officials that spent over a year really engaging and drilling down in all the possibilities. And I think what we came out with is an example of how government can do big things. It is by no means perfect, and there's a lot more work that we need to do. But to save the port with 60 acres, a minimum of maritime and industrial space where you will have a blue highway, you'll have a new cruise terminal, you will have 28 acres of green space, you will have 500,000 square feet of commercial and industrial space.
And apartments.
And you will have 6,000 new apartments, 2,400 of which, 40%, are going to be affordable to address our housing crisis. And so it's an example in a time when I think democratic cities struggle to govern properly, where we really can show in this city that we can do big things that benefit the community. And there are many community benefits, including into NYCHA and other affordable housing. And we took measures to make sure that the communities surrounding the marine terminal are going to benefit from this redevelopment. They're not going to be pushed out.
Well, you know, there was a lot of opposition to the policies. There were protests as you were meeting. I wonder how you were able to change the mind of the Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, who initially was against it, but now is on board.
Look, I think the task force generally and all of the members really wanted to get to yes. And I give a lot of credit to everybody for engaging, even those who did not vote for it. Ultimately, we had more than 2/3 vote for the project. And what the initial plan was presented by the city, compared to where we ended up, was so dramatically different. And I think that's a real credit to the task force, because we really leaned on the city to amend the plan, to adjust and account for a broad array of community interests. And Borough President Reynoso wanted very much to get to yes, and felt like there needed to be some additional study to see what the actual possible uses of that area were. I fully supported that, so that was included in it. And I think that ultimately we made it better and better with every iteration. And so I think we can be proud of it. And I hope that even those who voted no, many of whom wanted a lot of the work that remains to be done and will be done to have been done first, we need to do that work. And so I hope everybody can band together and engage in that work.
Who pays for it?
Well, the housing pays for a significant amount of it.
So, I mean, is it federal money, city money, private developer money?
Well,
all of the above?
I was able to help get the largest infrastructure grant that EDC has ever gotten in the city, $164 million.
Wow.
The city has put in ultimately about $200 million. They will put in with the matching grant to that. The state has put in a little. So we have about $400 million right now.
Wow.
Of government funding that is going to spur this. We hope to get a lot more. But ultimately, where it came down to is the only way to generate enough revenue to save the port, to redevelop it, to rebuild it, was to have some luxury housing. So about 1/3 of the housing is luxury, about 1/3 is market rate, a little less than 1/3, and then 40% is affordable. So it's a good mixed-use community. We've got to take care of a lot of the transit and transportation issues there. We've got to make sure that the water and sewage and floodplain issues are addressed. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the opportunity is really incredible.
How soon are we going to see all this happen?
Oh, it'll be a while as these things go, but it will start very soon.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you at home for joining us as well.